We're getting some good questions here. Keep them coming. So one of the questions about there in Illinois, is this a great state for seller financing? I hate to say it's not, but it's really not.
It's especially outside of Cook County, you're going to do much better. In Cook County, you're going to have a hard time finding buyers for those notes. Outside of Cook County, better.
Yes.
But Illinois is a tough state.
So just be sure too, I know a lot of the seller finance people either don't talk about this or just not aware of it. There are debt license, collection license you need to have in certain states. And Illinois is one of the states that requires you to have a debt license and bond. So I would encourage you to explore more about that. We're not attorneys, but we definitely would like to make sure you're focused on that. Yeah, so Heidi made the comment too. This is a perfect option, so they don't have to ask for a down payment when selling a house. Sure. If we can solve that problem, we would love to be able to do that for you. And getting the information is key. So what we want you to do, this is the game plan we're putting forth. I want you to go get in a house, find that borrower, right? This is a technique that our buddy Dan Diaz didn't know about, this whole partial world. He's done hundreds, not thousands of owner finance notes. Get your borrower in place, reach out to Mark, get him to underwrite that loan, make sure the borrower has the ability to repay and everything is clean. Have the documentation, get the loan, you can get down payment. I encourage you to still get that down payment, right? Reduce your basis, reach out to us and say, listen, I need 40 grand to go do this. How many payments will you do for 40 grand? And we'll give you a number, right? We'll write it up. We'll have a servicer do it. We'll have an attorney. Well, if you need escrow, we'll do that. And we'll keep going over and over again. And we'll cash out as much as we possibly can. And we have plenty of capital to do this with. We just want to basically be in a position of the note buyer and let you do what you do as best you can.
We're the laziest investors you'll meet. We just want to buy a stream of payments. That's it.
I don't see Bank of America go down there hustling, right?
No, exactly.
Wells Fargo's not hustling. We're just like them. We like our computer seats. We like being close to our fridge, all that good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we have the capital to do this kind of stuff. We encourage you to go through Mark and let him know, I'm looking to sell this note, right? Or there's plenty of other ones too. Mark's not the only one, but he's a nationwide with tons of knowledge. So I would start with Mark so that Mark can kind of lead you the right direction. Right? If you have a weird scenario, he can refer you if he needs to. But more than likely, he can write for all 50 states without any problems. Right? So, Mark, everything we've said here, you've had years and decades of years of experience. Is anything we're saying here incorrect? I know we've been probably talking for a couple months now. Is anything here that we're maybe misguiding people on, or from what you've seen in your experience?
No, the only caveat I'd be a little careful of was what Nathan said. You can have the buyer pay the fee, the RMLO fee. You have to be a little careful there because most states have a licensing law, and that licensing law prohibits anybody from collecting a fee without being licensed. So if the seller tries to collect that fee, that can be problematic. But if the buyer is paying the fee directly, then you don't have that issue. The other thing is that the RMLO requirement is for sellers. It's not for buyers. Buyers are not required to hire somebody to do this process. Sellers are the ones that are required. So anytime you have an RMLO engaged in that process, they're going to be, their client is the seller, not the buyer. So they're obligated to fulfill the report based upon what the seller tells us is the nature of it. So that obligation is the seller's obligation to pay that fee. They can pass it on, however they can figure out a way to pass it on. But it's really the relationship is between the RMLO and the seller. That's where the client relationship is.
Yeah.
So Randy made a comment that he's in the process of buying a finance deal, just closed the subject to, and about to execute a strategy with a wrap. Can you create a note prior to closing with the end buyer? And how long do you need the seasoning before we can buy the note? I'm not sure if I fully understand your question.
I'm not sure how you'd create a note before.
So again, you're creating a note with the borrower, that borrower in that position. The notes between you and them. The agreement between you and I is I'm buying a part of that note, right? We're not creating a new note. I'm not giving you a loan. In this case, I'm working with a partial. I'm buying a part of that note you just created. If that makes sense. I mean, now if this is a land contract or deed of trust or a mortgage, that may change our return number. But in the case of we're going to buy a part of it, just like you sold that entire note to us. In this case, you're not selling the entire 360 months. You're only selling 60 months, 24 months, 180 months. We're buying a part of that future payment, and it reverts back to you. There's an assignment of mortgage and all that stuff that goes inside of that. For the second question, Nathan, I'll let you answer this. How long do you need? What seasoning do you need? And I know Mark argued with us on a private call about this, right? How long do you need to buy a note for seasoning?
So I'm more interested in buying a whole note. And if you've gone through an RMLO and it's gone through the proper underwriting, I'll buy it. I'll table fund that. I'll buy that right away. My thinking on that, my reasoning on that is if you've just qualified this borrower, then that's good enough. You know, if they're brand new and they've just been qualified, then they're qualified in my mind. So I'll buy that right away. I don't need any seasoning.
Mark,
Dave, I know you want some seasoning on that, right?
I want a month or so just to make sure the borrower, even though their ability to pay is, they actually have the motivation. Mark, is there any concerns with us buying a note table funded? Or is there any kind of rules or laws against that with Dodd-Frank at all? Or
no, there's no restriction. But the reality is, you know, when a mortgage company makes a brand new home loan, they don't have a seasoning history on how they made those payments. It's from day one. There's a brand new loan being made, and they'll fund that loan based upon the underwriting criteria. And that's my attitude as well. And similar to Nathan's in that respect is that if I can do the underwriting and I feel confident with the buyer being able to make the payments, I don't need seasoning. There's a tradition in this industry that seasoning is a key component to it. Yeah. And you know, they can get run over by a truck tomorrow. It has nothing to do with the seasoning, how they've done in the past. So I prefer looking at it from the perspective of underwriting today, what do they look like today, and do I think that they're going to make the payments based upon the RMLO? That's kind of how I look at the paper.
Yeah, and one other thing that goes along with that as well is it's not unusual for payments to drop off when there's a change of servicer. So if somebody's been making payments to whoever, one servicing company for the last 6 months, and now all of a sudden they're changing, it can just be a little bit confusing. It can put people off, and then payments can get missed. And we've seen that, Dave, you've seen that. We've seen that over the years.
Yep.
So again, my reasoning is if I can be the first servicer and the only servicer that they're dealing with, then great. And not me personally, obviously, I use a third-party servicer. But if their first payment can go straight to my servicer, so that's what they're used to and that's what they're habituated to do, is just continue to pay that one servicer. That's another reason why I'll table fund that guy.
So Rainey asked the last question. Dodd-Frank only allows you to do 3 seller finance transactions in a calendar year. Is that correct, Mark?
No, it's not. It's the three loan or 3 transaction rule applies to when you have to hire a loan originator. If you're doing 3 or more in a given year, then you have to hire a loan originator for the owner-occupied transactions. That's where that three transaction rule comes into play. If you're doing less than 3 in a given 12-month period, and it's not, by the way, a calendar year, it's a 12-month period, then you may not have to hire a loan originator. So if you're one-offs, that type of thing, if you've just got a seller who's got one property he's selling and carrying back, and he's not an investor of any sort, you don't really need the loan originator. I have people that still hire me to do it just because they want to know that they have confidence in the buyer to be able to perform. But it's not a requirement, where Dodd-Frank does require 3 or more in a given.
But they still need to make sure that borrower has the ability to repay. They can't just say, give me your checkbook and boom. They need to make sure that that borrower's ability to pay. Is that correct?
Well, they should. They don't have to hire a loan originator to make that determination, though.
Gotcha.
That's a distinction, is that the 3 rule, 3 transaction rule is where I mentioned earlier, that's the Loan Originator Employment Act. I mean, that's where we get paid when it happens for 3 or
Yeah.
more. But less than 3, if it's one-offs every once in a while, you just don't have the requirement under Dodd-Frank to hire anybody.
And
Awesome.
Jeff Watson is working to put you out of business.
Yeah.
To change that to 24 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Is that, I didn't hear that.
Jeff Watson, we had him on a few months ago. He's trying to push 24, but even with 24, you still want someone to kind of look over the numbers. Right?
I would.
Yeah.
I would
It's
still
just-
want to have a
just-
third party look at
It's
that.
just a strategy. It's a good strategy to make sure somebody else is looking over your shoulder. That's really what it boils down to.
Again, it makes it more valuable when you're going to resell it. So a third party, check this out. Yes, they're qualified.
And us note buyers want to see that too, right? I don't want to see the fact that, well, I ran numbers, right? What'd you run, right? I want to make sure that someone qualified that borrower to make me feel more comfortable that that borrower is going to perform. Not someone said, hey, listen, I met one at a diner and they had a checkbook and they wrote me a deposit of 10 grand. That doesn't track me at all to that deal. It actually reverses it. I kind of want to run from that deal. So make sure you do it right so that you have options when you need to get cash.
Yeah. All right, Mark. So we'll wrap up here, but we're always curious to hear from our guests about where you think we're headed. We're talking a lot about seller finance, so let's go in that direction. Where do you see seller finance going here in the future? What's your crystal ball?
It just seems to me that when you've got high interest rate cycle like we have going on and high prices, seller carryback has traditionally been much more attractive. It allows a buyer to get in without having to jump through all the hoops, and it allows the seller to sell the property and create that revenue stream. So for me, if you look back at cycles, when we've seen high interest rate or high inflation cycles, seller carryback is very common, kind of rears its head and becomes much more of a prominent player in those types of economies. So I suspect that's what we're looking at in the near term. It seems like until rates drop significantly, I think that's what you're going to see.
Wow.
What's your rate drop prediction? Any thoughts on that?
Oh boy, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be talking to you guys right now. I'd be at the meeting or something. It's hard to say. I read something yesterday that 80-some% of panelists, experts think that rates are going to stay the same or go up. So that kind of gives you a perspective.
We read recently that the credit card debt in America is like 1.3 billion or trillion.
I think.
It's highest ever.
Yeah.
So these borrowers are putting a lot of money. So those people who are doing owner finance, just be aware of that yes, things have been good for the last 3 to 4 years, that things have been performing great, which me, Nathan, as you probably could see, we're in the space of buying performing notes, which was very rare 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Just be careful of that, because if that hits, your portfolio may drop dramatically. So that's the scary part about this.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that. So, well, Mark, hold on for a minute. We're going to let the public go and we'll recap with you. And I appreciate you joining us on this Friday afternoon and sharing your wealth of knowledge.
Well, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.